and gone, and we talked up a storm about our team, about our form and how it could be. And when the new week comes around, the talk around the town is what happened across the nation in the footy. Tuesday night, we're talking footy.
Welcome everybody to Talking Footy. What a night we've had at the Tribunal. Probably the first major night we've had in 2001. Matthew Lloyd out for one match, the preliminary final, and Alistair Lynch the same, one match, the prelim final up at the Gabba. We'll go to Hutto shortly at the Tribunal. Nick Holland's our guest tonight from the Hawks. It was great to see him back on the field and doing well on Sunday against the Swans. Welcome to Caro and Wolsey, as always. Rob, you've had one heck of a day, haven't you? I mean, you gave character reference to Alistair Lynch tonight, and you went to Bernie Quinlan's daughter's funeral today, which must have been very difficult for everybody.
It was, Bruce. Alana Quinlan, Bernie's daughter, died of cancer, and the funeral was today. And as you'd expect, the football community was outstanding in their support. So our best wishes to Bernie and Cheryl.
Yeah, hear from all of us, Bernie. Caro, the big news story. I mean, Lloyd and also Lynch, but I guess Lloyd in particular.
I think everyone in the footy world tomorrow, Bruce, will be saying, whether or not they think the verdict was a fair one, that there is no way the Tribunal could not have taken into account the timing of this suspension. They cannot have ignored the fact that Matthew Lloyd could be missing a grand final.
Well, they say they don't, Caro. They repeatedly say they don't set the calendar, they don't set the timetable. But I agree with you. I think they have taken it into account.
Has any chairman of the Tribunal had more pressure on him than Brian Collis for donkey's ages, I think?
Well, we still talk to this day about John Coleman, and we still remember those tragic photographs. Now, what Tribunal chairman would want to be responsible for that repeat of history?
Well, let's go down to the Tribunal with Anthony Hudson. Hutto, it's been a long night, I guess a tense night down there.
It has been a tense night for everyone, obviously, particularly Matthew Lloyd. As you said, he got the 1 week, and it was a very interesting Tribunal case. He came out afterwards with Ricky Nixon, his manager, and the Essendon officials, and immediately was asked for a comment. He made no comment, and of course the question was then put to Essendon about whether they would appeal or not, and Peter Jackson, the chief executive, said they would take some advice and make a decision in the morning. So that will also, of course, be room for speculation over the next couple of days. They do have an extra week, of course, before the preliminary final. But a very interesting case. Matthew Lloyd, he was asked straight off whether or not he headbutted Darren Gaspar, and he said, no way, I would not do that. He said, basically, he was trying to push past Gaspar. Gaspar had corralled him, if you like, to the line and then over the boundary line, and he felt he was pretty close to the fence, and at that stage he wanted to get back to the square where Kevin Sheedy had told him to lead out of, and he said with his whole body he tried to push past Gaspar. Now, that was a little bit... He did admit making contact, by the way, but he said it was more of a brush and that his eyes weren't even on Gaspar at the time. That was a little bit different to the evidence of Scott McLaren, the umpire, who didn't report him at the time, but after Gaspar's reaction, he felt that it was worth putting a notice of investigation in, which he then did, and followed it up on the video. And he said that it certainly was a headbutt. He said it was a slight headbutt at the lower end of the scale of headbutts, but nonetheless one that he felt had to be reported. Darren Gaspar said he felt slight contact to the head. He said he was angry at the time, and he called Matthew Lloyd a weak so-and-so in reaction, but he said he did not say that he'd been headbutted. Scott McLaren, the umpire, said that Gaspar had told him that he'd been headbutted, but Darren Gaspar said no, he didn't say that he'd been headbutted at the time. Now, the interesting thing was Brian Collis and his reaction during the case and afterwards. The chairman of the Tribunal, he said during the case that a headbutt is a headbutt. And at that stage, I guess we got the feeling that Matthew Lloyd might have been in some trouble. Now, he was found guilty, as we said, and when it came to punishment, it was interesting because earlier in the night, Brian Collis had made it clear that previous cases didn't matter when they were deciding whether someone was guilty or not, only when it came to penalty. Now, we thought that Ian Finlay, the Tribunal advocate, would bring up the Glenn Archer case. Of course, he got off the headbutt. But Brian Collis got in ahead and actually referred to the Barry Hall case and the Trent Crode case from earlier in the year. Both those players received a one-match suspension for headbutting, and they were slight headbutts. So even then, before the actual penalty was announced, we got an indication from Brian Collis that perhaps Matthew Lloyd could get a suspension and that it would be 1 week, and that's as it turned out.
Gee, Hutto, and what was the feeling afterwards, do you reckon? I mean, what are the punters saying down there, the other journalists and the football world? Is he lucky, is he unlucky, or did he get his just desserts?
Well, I think, and it's a tough call, I think it's probably a fair result, probably a predictable result. It was very hard. There was a lot of disagreement even amongst the journalists and amongst everyone in the football world. Certainly Graham Bond, for instance, who's covered a lot of tribunal cases, he thought that given the history of the tribunal, that he should have got 2 matches. But Brian Collis made the point in referring to Hall and Crode that just because you've had suspensions in the past, and we know that he's had the 2 and the 1 match this year, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get more than that this time, although that has been the general history. So whether or not, as you referred to earlier, they took into account a grand final was coming up, I guess we'll never know, but they certainly didn't mention that fact.
Where's he at the moment, do you think? Because that wasn't the only incident that Matthew Lloyd was involved in on Friday night. Just a few minutes before that, he gave Ray Hall a little one in the solar plexus, didn't he? I mean, what's going on in his mind at the moment, do you reckon?
Well, we'll have a look at it here, Bruce, and you can see...
You get a good view in a moment, Wolsey,
Yeah.
where we saw Luke McCabe go for a match for... Not identical to this, but here we go.
Actually, I think he hurt his arm, actually, when he made contact with Ray Hall. He's taken the angry pills this year, and when he got suspended for the 2nd time, which was only a month ago, I felt then that somebody at Essendon had to sit down with him and just say, hey, this just can't keep on happening.
Well, it's building up now, isn't it? I mean, they know that better than we do. 1, 2 and 1, or the melee, you could forgive him for that one.
But the interesting point about Friday night, Bruce, was that it was a point in the game where really Essendon had so much momentum. I mean, there wasn't all that much tension left in the game. Most people watching the game thought that Essendon had the game won. That's why I found it such a strange thing to do, and that would be the reason I think Essendon would be a little bit concerned.
Well, it was 4-5 to 1-4 at that stage. What's he worth?
The score didn't really...
Yeah, they were on
flattered
top.
Richmond.
They were on top.
Yep.
What's he worth in the prelim final? How many goals is he worth to the Bombers? He's not playing.
No, well, he averages 5.1 goals a game. I would think he gives away at least 2, possibly 3. So there's 8. His replacement, and we don't know who that might be, maybe Barnard, maybe Rioli, we'll wait and see. Well, they'll be good for at least 3, I would think. I would think he's worth 4 goals, and that's a lot.
Do you think they'll appeal, the Bombers, on the decision?
I don't think they will.
I think they've rolled the dice a few times this week. I think they'd be pretty relieved.
Okay.
I think they would be relieved, Caro, yeah.
I don't reckon Brisbane are going to appeal either with Alistair Lynch. I mean, you were there, Wolsey, and we'll ask you a little bit about that in a moment. Hutto, were they pretty happy with the 1 match for Alistair Lynch?
I think they'll cop it, Bruce. Certainly the video evidence did show that there was definitely a strike there. Once again, Alistair Lynch, a bit similar to Matthew Lloyd, said he was trying to push off. He actually said that Darryl Wakeland had belted him a minute before and he thought another one was coming, and so he pushed off. But the video evidence was pretty damning and it supported pretty much what the goal umpire had said. I know that Alistair Lynch has been getting a bit frustrated in the last few weeks, perhaps with the way he's felt he's being treated out there, and maybe hasn't got the protection he would have liked, so maybe this was just a build-up of frustration. But I think given the video evidence, and maybe he's a bit stiff, there even was video there, I think they'll take the 1 week and make sure he's back for the grand final. But it certainly puts a different spin on both preliminary finals.
Hutto, just going back very quickly to Matthew Lloyd, was Wayne Jackson's intervention in the case brought up at the tribunal?
No, it wasn't. Certainly the defence of Matthew Lloyd was certainly about what happened out there on the ground. I think that's a matter for Essendon and for Peter Jackson to think about. Certainly the Bombers, we know, weren't happy about it, and I guess if they were to form some sort of appeal, that could be a basis of it. Whether that would be legal or taking it back through AFL forum, I'm not sure, but they're not happy about it, but it wasn't mentioned in the case.
Anthony, thanks a lot.
No worries.
Thanks for your time. Hutto at the tribunal. Still on Lloyd, wasn't only the report, as it turned out, and now the suspension, it was the 100 goals as well. I mean, he had it all on that night, didn't he? What do we think about it all? The AFL have basically said they're powerless to stop an invasion. They don't know how they can do it. The one thing that's got me, and I've called both the last 2 years that this has happened, where he's kicked his 100. Last year it was held up for nearly 20 minutes, and Friday night I think for about 7 or 8. On both occasions the game's been won at that stage. Had the game been really close on either occasion, it would be so disruptive to the flow and rhythm of a match.
Look, that point, but James Hird has said, I think in the last few days, that he was actually watching out for little kids who he was worried were getting knocked over in the melee of all these. That's what worries me, is that there's so many small children and there are so many great big adults. I mean, what on earth are people older than us doing, running out onto the ground? I just can't understand that, Rob. I find that really stupid.
Yeah, it's become a tradition, hasn't it? Jump the fence and get on the ground. And let's face it, most of them haven't got a chance of getting near Matthew, and they take him from the ground anyway. I felt for the Richmond players on Friday night, because they huddled in the middle of the ground and there were people, Richmond supporters included, hurling abuse at them. Yeah. They were behind, well behind, and they had to cop that. And
I think Danny Frawley copped enough of that going up the race at half-time and also after the match. It was pretty impressive the way they brought him down. I've got to say, it was a bit like Gladiator and all that, wasn't it? Coming back onto the ground, everyone had waited.
Evidently, the AFL had organised 4 exit points. No matter where Matthew, which end he kicked it, they were ready to take him from the ground. Just another point, Bruce. I do think that we've had 2 forwards in Lynch and Lloyd go up in this last week. Forwards are not getting protected, in my opinion, from umpires, and there were certainly 2 or 3 free kicks that were definitely free kicks, in my opinion, to Matthew Lloyd. It does build frustration and anger. Well,
let's ask Nick Holland about that, because he plays a key forward role. Andrew Dunkley got frustrated with Chick, didn't he? Who put the big screen on him when Thompson was taking off, and so he belted him. Yeah, and it's been reported.
We'll see more and more of that, because you can see that Chick had no eyes for the football. All he wanted to do was block his teammate Thompson. Thompson led. Chick was making sure that he was going to block his opponent.
He's saying, what happened there?
Well, what happened?
Tough, isn't he?
Dunkley said, get in my line and you'll pay a price, and that's the price.
So have you got sympathy for Dunkley at all in that situation? Or have you, I mean, what's the answer? The umpires are on the ball and pay a free kick?
I've got sympathy for Dunkley, because Thompson's his opponent. He's ready to go after Thompson. Chick steps in, puts the screen or the block on, and Dunkley again says, well, you're not going for the ball, so cop that.
3 matches for Dunkley. Michael Voss got fined $1,200 for wrestling, and Josh Carr got off. So that's the tribunal tonight. Intravenous strips, Brisbane. Before the game, half-time. Boy, what do you think about it all?
I knew absolutely nothing about it, Bruce, until the last day. What about you, Cara?
I had no idea that they were using it at half-time and before games. I mean, I've heard of individual isolated cases where there have been other medical problems provoking it. I was shocked. I mean, I know it's not beyond the rules, but I think most of the footy world would be shocked. And what I hate is that it's another step away from footy, from the old-fashioned kick in the park. And I know that sounds incredibly naive and old-fashioned, but, you know, the AFL is the keeper of the code. And I just wonder about schoolboys and people seeing that sort of thing. I think it's quite frightening.
Let's hear what the Chief Executive of the AFL Players Association, Rob Kerr, had to say today.
No doctor we've spoken to thinks it's something that should be encouraged. As a matter of fact, they all speak strongly against it. I don't think it's a great image to have of players being hooked up to trips during the game. And the other question is, well, if you allow it to go on, would you have the midfield of every team in the competition going in to be hooked up to IV trips at half-time and the like? And I just don't think it's good for the game, and it's not required.
Woolsey, I saw you nodding when Caro was making her statement. Do you agree with her?
Oh, I'm appalled, actually. I knew nothing about it. I think it's wrong. People say it's not cheating, but it's not in the spirit of the game that you've got players hooked up to a saline drip at half-time, and could even be before the game.
And you've got the players' representatives saying that doctors say it can be dangerous.
But not Brisbane doctors, by the sound of it. Because they wouldn't allow it to happen. And you do wonder whether they can enforce this on Brisbane now, the AFL?
Well, that's what I was wondering. The AFL are saying no, they're not happy with it, but how do they enforce that? How do we know it's not happening?
has said today that he is going to tell Brisbane they are no longer to do this practice. He did admit that it wasn't against the rules, and he sort of said that they couldn't force Brisbane, but he said he was confident that Brisbane would not do it again.
He's going to have some issues with Brisbane, I think, in the next fortnight, with the Brownlow as well. So,
you think Brisbane might say we're going to keep doing it?
I reckon they might. I do. I think they might. Let's move on. James Hird, he set it up early, didn't he? Duncan Kellaway not used on him. He wasn't used on him early last week, bowed, and then Kellaway came on and quieted him, but he was sitting it out, Kellaway, when Hird was setting it up early.
James Hird had 10 first-quarter possessions. And you can see there, look how good he is at getting the ball in close. So they use him in at the all-important centre bounces. But I thought he was the dominant player in the first quarter. 10 possessions is a lot to kick-start a final.
And in the midfield, just like Cooter got them too, didn't he? Cooter did a similar job for Carlton. And again, Nigel Smart, the person we expected to be on him, was a cross half-back on Ryan Hulahan.
And they exploited it. You can see Bickley was playing on Cooter, and then they had Rashudo. All of these players were a lot shorter. Cooter's as strong as a bull. So in the first quarter, 3 kick-ins. They directed them all at Cooter. And there's Goodwin, shorter again. Nigel Smart was, I think, the player that needed to take him. Now, evidently the plan was, if Cooter went into the forward line for Carlton, Smart would pick him up. But in the midfield, Cooter ended up getting 34, 35 possessions.
Were Richmond and Adelaide out-coached on the weekend?
Yeah, they were. They were.
Cooter, he does things that nobody can do. We've said that about Long and Jarm and other people, but no one else can do this. To take it in one hand like he did.
It is unbelievable. Look at that. Ball comes down, he grabs it like an egg, and then it sprints away. I've never seen another player do that. Look at the physique of him.
Gee, he doesn't need a drip at half-time, does he? I mean, he's such a difference, isn't he? I mean, we talk about champions in September, and we've seen Hurd, and we've talked about Lloyd tonight and the impact. Cooter, if they can ride on his back, the Blues, all the way through to the grand final.
Remember the difference he made in 1999, and again he was just really finding his best form going into that final series, and obviously memorably in that preliminary final against Essendon.
And didn't play last year. Was out of it last year when they needed him so much. Mistakes, one end of the scale to the other. Marsh and Goods, they were both critical. I mean, Marsh has dropped a sitter.
Finals football, out on the wing, you get a short pass come to you and you spill it, well, you're going to pay a penalty. And, of course, that's what happened. And, gee, isn't young Ryan Hulahan a good player? Just uses the ball particularly well.
Got the smarts and Goods here.
Yes, at Colonial. And they're going along pretty well here, Sydney. And he just tries to do a little bit too much and, you know, they get swamped. And the Hawks, their running and their tackling was much better than it has been. And it's Ryan Loney. He'll end up kicking the goal.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nathan. His twin brother. Have a look at that.
Yeah, not bad. How many teams can win the grand final? How many teams can win the premiership right now?
Essendon can win, Brisbane can win, maybe Carlton.
Well, Essendon still very much rate Carlton ahead of probably pretty much anyone else, in my view.
Well, Carlton are going to have to beat them both and Richmond to win it. They've got a hard task.
Do you think Port Adelaide could win?
No. I think they're just slightly off the pace. I think they're the fourth best chance right now.
Will they be content with a third or fourth finish?
It's interesting. I think that this week's a huge game for them in the fact that they deserve to be in the top 4 at the end of the year, but I'm not sure whether they can come again. And they're going to have to beat Essendon and Brisbane to win the flag as well. I'm not sure if they can without Paxman and without Wilson. Nick Holland, after this. The Hawks are alive and dangerous.
We're talking footy.
This news update is brought to you by a bank that's open right now. NetBank. Make it happen 24 hours a day.
Good evening. The HMAS Manura will now bypass Port Moresby, taking the more than 500 boat people on board straight to the Pacific island nation of Nauru. They'll wait there to see if the government's appeal against a federal court ruling ordering most of them back to Australia is overturned. The Prime Minister's meeting with George W. Bush has been overshadowed by secret talks with media magnate Rupert Murdoch in Washington. Sydney police are tonight hunting 2 prison escapees wanted in the United States for drug dealing. They broke out of jail in a stolen delivery truck. A young New South Wales woman has been critically injured in a suicide bomb in Turkey. Amanda Rigg lost her arm in the blast. And scientists close to the first test for ovarian cancer. Full details, late news.
Adieu beau jour, mes chansons d'amour. Mon joie, je ne chanterai plus pour toi. Je sais d'oublier.
Saying goodbye to cigarettes, you're twice as likely to succeed with Nicorette Patch.
Non, non, je te dis non.
Where do the sandwich experts go for the perfect chicken Caesar sandwich? With Turkish bread, a tender fillet of original recipe chicken, and my tangy Caesar dressing? The chicken experts, of course.
In less than 12 months, you could find yourself in a well-paid computer career with training and job placement assistance from Australia's leading IT educator, Spherion. Call 132784.
For safer holiday driving, oops, get Bridgestone's experts to fit donuts. Tyres that'll stop you sooner. And the sooner you fit them, the better. Talk about donuts to the experts at your Bridgestone Tyre Centre.
Series 2 for the driver in you.
Where do the sandwich experts go for the perfect chicken Caesar sandwich? With Turkish bread, a tender fillet of original recipe chicken, and my tangy Caesar dressing? The chicken experts, of course.
I'll have to go now. It's not going to be sorted out right here and now. I'll put the video on with the CD. You're insane. Let you hear the soundtrack to Dreamer because you didn't kick the winning goal in '98, my friend. Essendon 85. Essendon Hawthorn. What was that? I don't know. What's going on there? Man, I'm out of here.
We're getting the train next time, mate.
Oh, yeah. Tiger. We're fighting.
Veggie Wars. Fresh versus frozen.
Always buy frozen products.
Our groundbreaking tests exploding the myths.
There were a few surprises.
Taste, nutrition, value. What's best for your family?
That's when frozen can be really, really good.
6:30 on Today Tonight.
Nick Holland's had a wretched season. He's found it really hard to get on the field and then stay on the field after being just terrific in 2000. But he made a comeback of sorts on the weekend at the best possible time. Nick, welcome. Great to have you in.
Thanks, Bruce.
How have you pulled up?
Really well, actually. Probably didn't play much more than 2 quarters all up, so coming on at sort of the 20-minute mark of most quarters. So I feel very fresh and looking forward to this week.
Just a couple of big questions that we've been talking about so far. What about the drips in Brisbane? Did you have any knowledge, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, I didn't know that they were using it, but it's certainly a thing that's been around for a while, and I think they've been using it in American football for a while, and now they no longer use it. Our doctor said after a game it would be sensational to just replenish you're obviously dehydrated, and it helps get you recover quicker. Early last year when we played in that heat, when it was about 36 degrees in the opening round, I was actually going to go on a drip after a game because I was that dehydrated. I lost 4 or 5 kilos. So it's something that's sort of been bandied around, but probably don't really have the funds to do, and haven't really thought about it at half-time at all.
What do you think about the image of the game? Is it affected by the Lions using them? Do you think it sends out the wrong signals to everybody and the youth?
I don't think there's anything wrong. Basically what they're doing is, up in Brisbane, especially where it's hot, they're obviously dehydrating a lot quicker, and so they're just trying to get it in, trying to actually make them healthier, I'd say. So it's not like they're taking a drug.
You don't feel like they're cheating?
Like that, so no, I think it's probably innovative. So it's good.
So you disagree with the Players Association and the AFL?
I'd have to look into it.
Strongly.
Obviously not a doctor, or sort of don't have enough knowledge in that area, but you know, you've got to see whether they're sort of the forefathers in this area, and it is an area which is going to help the players, and we're going to see a better spectacle because of it.
Matthew Lewis has been flirting with danger, hasn't he? And he's got it 1 week, preliminary final. I mean, he's been under a lot of pressure. He gets a lot of attention. What are your observations of his on-field behaviour this year?
Yeah, I was listening to Wolsey's comment, and it's probably right. A lot of the times the backline players tend to get the free kicks, and the forwards miss out when it is a 50-50 situation. So maybe that frustration. But I think with Matthew, he's a respected player amongst his own teammates and obviously from oppositions. I mean, any team would love to have him, and he's in the top 5 players in the AFL. So I don't think he needs to do that. He's proven himself already, so he doesn't really need to go out and do those things. You
were a united team before the game, weren't you? I mean, you didn't get a great start, but body language here, I mean, how did this all happen, Nick, with the national anthem?
We've done it in the past, but we specifically wanted to be seen as doing the team things and being selfless, because I don't know if you saw David Parkin's comments about us, basically saying we were a selfish team. And
we did pick those comments up, actually.
Yeah, so he probably sparked us a bit, and everything this week. Shane Crawford's been fantastic. His leadership, just wanting us to play as a team and to sort of really feel for each other, and that's the only way we're going to win.
What's it take to spark Schwabby at the moment? I mean, he was so placid and calm, and you were getting done at quarter time. Is this because his health is a problem, or is this him?
Well, if you look at our first quarter, a lot of nerves came out. We were miss-kicking the ball. There was a lot of young players. First final they were playing, and it was, I think, probably a fantastic move by Swabby to calm it down, get everyone sort of focused again, because the adrenaline is rushing in the first quarter, and he just came down, calmed us down, and the second quarter was a much better performance because of it.
Bruce, there was one coach who wasn't placid like Swabby, and that was Mark Williams, three-quarter time at the Gabba.
It was the hot gospel. It was Alan Killigrew, bless his heart, who passed away earlier this year, wasn't it? All over again.
I love seeing that. You know, you had a coach who was a bit like that, Nick, in Ken Judge.
Yeah, Judgey, yeah, he's sort of probably similar to Mark Williams in his approach, and it's unfortunate for him that he's sort of missing out at West Coast at the moment. Gee, he is going off there. It's reminiscent of a few of Judgey's messages.
I haven't seen him do that before, actually, have you?
Is it reminiscent of the way Peter Schwab spoke to your blokes after the St Kilda loss?
Yeah, I think that's the most animated Swabby's been this year. Told us it was the most disappointing loss that he'd been associated in playing and coaching. So he was really disappointed, and it's sort of it's hard. You feel as if you've hurt Swabby when we play like that, and that's good that we had that turnaround this week, and hopefully he's told us we can improve some more, and it's going to be a tough challenge this week over in Adelaide.
Did you have that same affection, I guess, towards Ken Judge, and how do you feel about him right now?
Oh, I feel for Judgey because well, David Parkin told me this story. We were actually talking about it earlier in the week, and David Parkin said that when Cole Kinnear took the Sydney job, he was interviewed, and the coaches are given one question. He said, "Oh, how do you think Sydney are going to go?" And the board said, "Oh, well, we think we'll make the finals this year, and we'll have a grand final within 2 years." And so David Parkin said, "Well, I'll refund your ticket," because I think Judgey probably should have asked that question first as well, because the board at the Eagles obviously had opinion of the Eagles here, and they don't think about injuries and things like that, and Ken's been very unlucky in that area.
But Judgey at Hawthorn as well?
Yeah, at Hawthorn he sort of developed a young list and sort of used his resources probably to the best that he could, and we developed as a team. And I think Swabby has sort of been fantastic in sort of releasing us and bringing us to a more offensive side, and a side that sort of really has confidence in ourselves and doesn't need the sort of the guidance of Judgey, or the sort of firm guidance that Judgey provided.
From a past coach to a present-day captain, and Shane Crawford, these photos were taken 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How's he going?
Yeah, he's been fantastic actually off the field. I saw that article. It sort of I was surprised with those photos, and now that you've said they were taken 3 weeks ago, that sort of makes sense, because it was before he was reported. But he pulled his head in, and he's been training very extremely hard, and his leadership has just improved in the last couple of weeks. He's just been sort of so positive, and a lot of the hardness at the ball and the team spirit came from him and his efforts during the week on the training track.
Did he deserve to be fined for getting suspended in the manner that he did at such an important time of the year?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what happened with the fines. David Parkin once again came across from Carlton and said Carlton players were fined for undisciplined acts. Now, we didn't have a fine structure in place, so I think the coaching staff decided, okay, because there's not one in place, we can't slap a fine on him now. So I'd agree with that, but I think Shane sort of realised that he made a mistake, and he's been spoken to by the coaching staff, and he's sort of pulled his head in, and has been fantastic.
Caro wrote a very illuminating and graphic story on Scott West on the weekend, which was fascinating reading. Very courageous of Scott to come out like this. Is there any analogy, any comparisons with what Shane Crawford has gone through in the last couple of years after the Brownlow, and with the captaincy and the difficulty he had, particularly last season?
Yeah, last season he sort of found it hard, just basically to get the motivation. I'm not too sure because I've sort of never sort of got a personal award of that extreme, but it must be hard if your work is your football and you reach the pinnacle, which is you know, playing AFL football, and then you're voted the best player in the AFL competition. You know, where do you go from there? And I think he set his goals this year. Okay, he's reached that. Now he wants a premiership, and that's what's been driving him this year, and it's got him back in form. And that Scott West article was, you know, really interesting, Carolyn. It's just it's sort of amazing because a footballer's life, it's sort of you wouldn't swap it for anything, and it's great, but there are pressures, media pressures and pressures from your own family, your teammates and the club, and you know, he's a leader there at the Western Bulldogs, and obviously was feeling it, and you know, found it very hard. And it's good now. The AFL Players Association has sort of got counsellors in, and we've got Matthew Lloyd's brother, Simon Lloyd, so maybe Matthew should go and speak to him about his behaviour, but he's fantastic helping us in that area.
One AFL coach has said to me in recent days that Scott West will have problems on the footy field next year because of the fact that he came out and spoke in the way he did, and I replied that I thought that would be really disappointing if that was the case.
If Tony Woods plays on, that might be the case, because I think he was the player that mentioned that.
I think, as Scott said though, Woodsy did it in a sort of a friendly way, like what's going on with you, but in a half-joking way. But would that be something that a player would use? Would you really use anything if it gave you an advantage?
I'll put this to you, Caroline, and anyone else can answer this. If you were 5 points down, or 5 points up, and Scott West is going for a goal, it's the grand final, the siren's gone, what are you going to do?
I'll never be in that situation, and I'm very glad I won't be.
You're going to try everything, I think, to win. But I think, you know, he's shown a lot of courage to come out and say that, and it is a sort of depression is a big problem. And Jeff Kennett, who's you know, a Hawthorn supporter, he's sort of got a good foundation looking after that, and I think it's shown tremendous courage there.
There's a golden rule on the program. Only Caro can ask a curly question. You've broken it, but that's okay, we'll forgive.
Not used to having the spotlight turned on me.
Nick, Daniel Chick, how important is he to the team? I just get the feeling that in the 2 years that he's been coached by Peter Schwab, he's just blossomed as a footballer. Yeah,
he has actually. He's sort of he's beefed up, and he's got lots of confidence in his body now, and he's sort of playing with a lot of aggression, and he's our sort of Team Max, we call him. He's the leader of our Team Max, the tackling, the smothering, the bumping, and up on the forward line he was so instrumental in keeping the ball in. You just look at him here, he's sort of so quick, he's almost the perfect footballer, and he was you know, definitely the 3-vote person on the ground, the best on ground, and yeah, I think his efforts, you know, can be singled out, but I think everyone in the team really stepped up at another level on the weekend.
Nick, we'll take a break, and we'll talk about your form and some other aspects of what happened on the weekend right after this. Stay with us.
Tuesday night, we're talking footy.
Over 2 million viewers made Always Greener the most successful Australian drama launch ever.
Terrific.
Fresh.
Very Australian. Sunday.
You've got to be kidding.
Just 5 minutes.
It's a style vacuum. I'm not moving down there.
Not everyone shares the same dream.
Hello?
Mate of mine took early retirement. 6 months later, the wife's pregnant. Bob by Sports Car. Hello, people mover.
I thought I might have a vasectomy.
What?
Telstra presents Always Greener, Sunday 7:30 on 7.
My friend Carly was shy because of her skin, so I showed her this.
Clean and Clear Deep Action Cream Cleanser cleans deep to help prevent pimples and leave your face tingly clean.
She's certainly not shy anymore.
Clean and clear and under control.
I'm
got a horror story for me? You happy with your job?
Not really.
You're not the guy from Pulp Fiction, are you, mate?
Actually, this is my 3rd week, so I'll probably hate it in about a month.
Life decision, let's go and find something else.
I know you feel, mate. You work like a dog all your life. It's hard, isn't it?
I've got seek.com.au sending me emails.
You ever look at seek.com.au?
That's how I got the job.
You happy with what you're doing?
Seek and you will find.
I'm not getting enough.
I need something more powerful.
I'd love mine to be stronger.
Are you getting the hit you need? You've got to try this. Airwaves, the amazing vapor release gum from Wrigley's. It tastes great and it bursts with fast-acting menthol and eucalyptus vapors that help your nose feel clear. Those long-lasting vapors go on and sugar-free Airwaves. Fast-acting, long-lasting, sensational. Also available in honey and lemon. Commodore Series 2. For the driver in you.
Welcome back to Talking Footy. Nick Holland, our guest. Nick, it must have been great to get out there. What sort of mobility do you reckon you have with the shoulders? I mean, were you able to really stretch at full tilt?
I've getting confidence, and these knocks that you see here, like I grow in confidence if I pull up all right after sort of copping some knocks like that. So that's the main thing. I don't think I'm going to do any more damage to them. There's always a worry, I suppose, but I feel that those knocks that we just saw then, and some of the big sort of pack situations and contested marks that I was involved in, it sort of helps out so much, and that's the main thing.
Was the plan, Nick, for you to play 10 or 12 minutes a quarter?
It was. I was only told at game day that I was sort of going to come on, you know, at that halfway mark, and I was sort of confident in my fitness because I've done a lot of work on my fitness, but they're sort of just concerned about my reading the play and things like that. And you know, the main thing was that I could contribute to the side, and hopefully the coaches saw that I did that. They haven't sort of chatted to me this week yet, but hopefully they saw that, and I'll be a bit better this week for it.
Can you make a major contribution over the next 2 or 3 weeks if you get that far?
Well, the thing is, being out there, and if I can take a few marks and make a few leads, they've got to put another sort of tall defender on me. It may free up John Barker, it may help out Nathan Thompson, probably gives more balance because then Sean Wren can go into the ruck. So that's one way I can make a contribution, but I feel I can sort of perform well as well.
Well, if you beat Port, you'll play the Bombers, and Dustin Fletcher's one of those players that tall defenders. Woolsey, have you ever seen anyone quite like him, or Nick?
He's like a soccer goalie, isn't he? So desperate. He's got those long arms and long legs, and again, he just forces a behind through there. Have you played on him?
Yeah, I have. He's sort of a fantastic player. He's got the gadget arms. You think you've got him, and then suddenly this fist comes from nowhere, and you know, then he's great with his recovery on the ground level as well. So yeah. Speaking
of that, Woolsey wrote an article this morning. We talked about it on Friday Night Footy about he used to love getting the big defender, and Dermot said the same thing. Now, Dean Solomon played on the big boys, on Gottens and also Richardson. I mean, it worked. It was Reece Jones relived, as she'd said, Woolsey. What do you think, Nick, about the smaller type against the big man?
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose Richardson is such a versatile sort of running player, so it's hard to match up. John Barker's another one like that who sort of has a fantastic running ability, so they have to almost compromise height and go with a running type player, but then you've got to be worried in pack marking contests and high marking contests.
It takes a lot of guts, I reckon, for a coach to put a smaller player on a quality tall forward, and that's what Sheedy did with Solomon. And here, this is before the game. James Hird goes up to Solomon, and that's before the match. And I've got no doubt he's saying, gee, you've got a big challenge today. We're right behind you. Thought it was terrific coaching and terrific captaincy.
Yeah, it shows a bit of good leadership. I hadn't seen that, but you'd be pumped if your leader, especially James Hird, sort of came up to you and sort of was excited for you and sort of was alongside of you. What we sort of say is, you know, make your teammate feel 10 foot tall, and if you've got someone like James Hird playing alongside of you, you do.
Who plays full forward in the prelim final? Is it Barnard?
I think they could use Barnard there at times, maybe Lucas, maybe even Rioli. I think they can mix and match it a bit.
Let's go up north. The other favourite for the flag, the Lions, who've impressed us all. It's the only game you've played in this year, Nick. You're batting 6 for 7 or 7 for 8 this year. The only loss that you've actually played in was against the Lions up there. Sean Hart, who's a real favourite of yours, Wolsey, I know, and Brad Scott, both had huge matches.
Well, Sean Hart, and he's had the helmet ripped off there, but he had 15 possessions in the third quarter, and he had the ball on a string. And Brad Scott was equally as impressive. But it was one of those nights where, you know, the Fab Four, here's Brad Scott kicking a great goal from the boundary line, but the All-Australian boys, who get a lot of publicity, and rightfully so, they were, you know, Vossi was probably a little bit quiet.
He had a hammy problem, Vossi, going in. They'd worked him overtime.
But when you can get players like Sean Hart and Brad Scott step in, it shows how deep they go.
Did you play with Brad Scott at Hawthorn?
He was, yeah, it was disappointed to lose Scotty, because he's sort of that aggressive player that is good to have in a side, and he never sort of backs away from a contest. And probably one of his biggest problems that Hawthorn saw was his skills, and you look at those goals and he certainly improved that area, and kicking goals like that's a big asset for him.
Well, a couple of players up there that Brisbane have got, Ackermanis and Lepage, they are the game breakers. And, you know, that game, it was an arm wrestle for some time, and then all of a sudden we just saw this young fella with the ball, Jason Ackermanis. He just really put on a show. Gets the ball out in space, he's got blistering speed and can kick either foot. And when they moved Lepage from the back line to the forward line, it just gave them an extra target. Alistair Lynch was off the field at this time. He's such an important player to them now, Bruce, Lepage.
And Nick, I think you can relate to where Lepage is at. He's played a little bit more footy than you this year, but he's also coming in light on and trying to contribute in the finals.
Yeah, he's done his hamstring a few times, so he'd be a bit tentative as well. But similar to me, every game that he gets under his belt and every possession he gets, sort of he'd grow in confidence, and it'd be great if he was primed up, sort of coming into the grand final or preliminary final as they are.
They said he was coming back too early. Did you come back too early? Did that sort of almost wreck your season?
I came back. I played for Box Hill Hawks a half in Tasmania, probably a week earlier than I would have liked. But the reason I came back was because I felt that I wanted to test it out and see where I was at, and then probably make a decision. Okay, at least now I can say, oh, I can go on, or no, it's not going to be any good for the finals. And I got through that game, which was good. It was a bit sore, but then when I got through the next week's game, I was pretty pleased.
Nick, we've discussed one old teammate in this segment. We'll talk about another one after the break. One I reckon you might remember.
Where do the sandwich experts go for the perfect chicken Caesar sandwich? With Turkish bread, a tender fillet of original recipe chicken, and my tangy Caesar dressing? The chicken experts, of course.
The closing down sale is on, only at Australian Lighting, Moorabbin, Nunawading, Thomastown, Fawkner and Hoppers Crossing. Halogen downlight with 3,000 hour globe and Atco transformer, $15.90. 30cm Italian alabaster oyster light, $14.80. Halogen 3-light spot, an unbelievable $89. 500 watt halogen floodlight, $9.90. 3-in-1 bathroom heater, $109. Bargains for builders at the closing down sale, only at Australian Lighting, Moorabbin, Nunawading, Thomastown, Fawkner and Hoppers Crossing.
romantic sport escape, you can.
Oh, I'm exhausted. And you're mad. But he's really a great friend. They say life's what you make it. Read Introline today. Good friends are everything. Oh, that's cold.
Introline. You've got to have friends.
Get ready for adventure.
This is going to be the action-adventure playground.
A garden that the kids will love.
Through the tunnel and finishing at a commando net.
It's full of fun, but still looks classy.
Sounds like a job for Ground Force.
Wednesday, 7:30 on 7. Then at 8.
3 fun-loving girls looking for an easygoing person to share house.
No one good looking.
Loves to clean.
Non-smoker.
No pet.
Just doesn't have smelly feet.
Now, what sort of a person is going to answer an ad like that?
You'll be surprised on Property Wednesday.
Like an art house movie, this shot, I think, don't you? And it's symbolic of Darren Jarman's afternoon. It was one of isolation. He was involved very little in what turned out to be his last game. He did at least kick a goal with his last kick. What a contribution he's made to footy with that football brain and that great ability on both sides of his body.
Yeah, Jars, he's a fantastic player. I remember I only probably played 2 seasons with him, but just leading to him, and Dunstall still rates him as the best player he's seen and loved leading to him. Yeah.
Were you surprised he was just left in the forward line all day?
Yeah, I was, Bruce. It can be a very lonely spot down there when you're not getting much ball come your way. I think he only had the 1 possession till half-time, and a bit of frustration that the ball didn't come to him. I just thought it might have been worthwhile giving him a run on the ball. 10 minutes, start of the 3rd quarter. He's got respect in the footy world. No matter where he plays, you have to have a good player on him. I guess that tells the story, doesn't it? End of a fine career.
Terribly sad end, and not to put too fine a point on it, Adelaide were dreadful on Saturday. What's it been like, Bruce, over in Adelaide this week?
Quiet, really. I was away yesterday, but yeah, I thought they'd be a little more savage. They were dreadful. They know that. They were the worst of the losers. Port were the best of the losers, and Adelaide were the worst, and Richmond were just in front of them, and Sydney somewhere else, I reckon. Week's break between round 22 and the finals. A good idea. Brownlow medal to be decided that week. All-Australian team, Ansett Rising Star, other things.
Yeah, Peter Swab's a big advocate of it, and he gives the reason because we haven't seen a fantastic grand final with
He likes a week between prelim final and grand. I'm talking about a week after round 22, and then start the finals fresh.
I think for the similar reason is just to basically get over all the niggles, and then the players would sort of go in fresh, fit, and you would have almost like a full list side, and you've got basically the best on the best.
OK, something food for thought. We've talked about, have we seen the best of the King, Wayne Carey? Have we seen the best of Paul Kelly?
Well, we may well have, Bruce. He just tears his hamstring here, stretches out to kick that ball and tears his hamstring. It was his good hamstring too, because he had a lot of hamstring trouble early in the year. He just seems to be injury prone nowadays, and I think he's question mark on his career.
There's a few teams need a good forward, Nick. You're out of contract, I know, at the end of the year. The Swans and the Crows are 2 of them, 2 of the losers, and the fallout for both clubs, I reckon, will be big after a bad loss. They were going to Kelly often, weren't they? But they needed a tall forward, didn't they? Well, look, Goods and O'Loughlin have been the 2 players up forward. They're just youngsters. They need a bit of support, big body support. They go to Kelly because he's Kelly. For a Barry Hall up there, I would think. And now this young fella's out of contract.
Yeah. And don't underrate Joel Smith though. All-Australian this year and had a sensational year. He was good on Paul Kelly.
Were you watching a few weeks ago when Bruce tried to trade you with Goodwin over in Adelaide?
Yeah, you're starting rumours, having mum and dad ring up, and everyone's sort of wondering about things. But I'm sure they're sick of the rumours in Adelaide, and yeah, probably sick of them over here. Now, definitely sick of them here at Hawthorn.
You're out of contract.
Yeah.
And those figures that you gave me before the show, you said that when you play, Hawthorn wins 90% of its games, and when you don't play, they only win 50%.
I think, yeah.
Have you presented that to the board?
I'll have to get my manager onto that. I think
you were Ian Dicker's big coup when he kept you last time, weren't you?
I think Ian Dicker's sort of a good person who's genuinely concerned for the players, as well as the good of the club, and he just decided to sort of look after me, not only sort of football-wise, but saw a future for me as developing as a person outside of football as well, and I really appreciated that.
Jimmy Plunkett's developed since he was with Mr Walker, hasn't he? Have a good weekend. Peveril early in the season as a rookie and doing a job, and now Plunkett later in the season, not the same players, I know, but What a contribution he was able to make.
Well, with Brett Ratton out of the team, he certainly stepped up. He just played such a good game and a lot of experience, and just felt like he belonged. It was interesting, after the game, he really went out of his way to say the support of the senior Carlton players meant so much to him. That he really felt as if he belonged there.
And speaking of senior Carlton players, we see Bradley here. Apparently Hume was downcast after McLeod's running goal, and Bradley said, just remember what you're there to do. Just remember what you have to do. And it turned out to be a great day for Hume, and not such a great day for Andrew McLeod, who's had a wonderful, wonderful season. Kevin Sheedy's article about maybe getting your best players off the ground, Stephen Silvani being injured, knocked out late in the game. Well, they took no chances late in the game, didn't they?
I got an idea that Carlton might have thought that was a good idea. Have a look at the talent there, Camporeale, Allen and Silvani.
They won't give Sheeds the credit. Carlton would never give Sheeds the credit. Smart move late in the game.
Oh, you don't want to lose them, in 5 minutes to go and the game's been won. It'd be terrible to lose them then, wouldn't it? Especially Silvani, who you can rest. He's sort of come back from a heavy knock. Camporeale, who's played all season, probably doesn't get much bench time at all, so just give him a rest.
You didn't get the big hook at the end of the game, did you? You stayed out there?
Yeah, well, basically because I hadn't had much game time. So.
OK. Good on you. Something you're going to be really interested in after the break. It's got something to do with umpires and interpretation, forwards and backmen.
I look forward to it.
Talking Footy.
Next, amazing scenes in New York where a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We'll go live to New York shortly.
Get ready to
Rumba is today's best music live on stage.
Nelly Furtado, Human Nature,
Jerry Halliwell,
Mandy Moore,
Emma Bunton,
special guest Craig David,
and still more, making Rumba one of the world's great concerts.
Fox FM and Packard Bell present
Rumba.
Saturday, November 17, Colonial Stadium. Tickets on sale this Friday from Ticketmaster 7.
We moved to Caroline Springs for a lot of reasons, but mainly because of the water.
And that's the reason why we built in Spring Lake Village, because it's right on the lake.
The houses here are all different. They've all got their own individual style.
Caroline Springs. See for yourself, because it speaks for itself.
The things I like the most are the gardens. Delphin are definitely doing what they said they would do with the planting and the maintaining.
Delphin.
What kind of bed is just right for you? A true luxury mattress? Or the luxury of an electric bed or latex bed? Will you choose a back care bed endorsed by the Chiropractors Association? A bed designed especially for kids? Or a bed treated to help control asthma triggers? Whatever the bed, there are good reasons to choose Snooze. So if you need a new mattress, you know where to go to feel comfortable.
Another reason to choose Snooze.
Remember East Timor? Anastasia does. The militia destroyed her home, forced her family to West Timor. Her husband is now dead. Caritas Australia is helping to reconstruct East Timor, but there's so much more to be done. Give urgently to rebuild the homes and lives of thousands like Anastasia. Please call Caritas Australia on 1800 024 413.
The sensational new YRV from Daihatsu. From just $17,990 with a stack of standard features that make YRV knockout value. Who could possibly bring you this much car from just $17,990? Daihatsu, that's who.
Can I help you there?
Thanks.
Did you ever look at seek.com.au?
That's how I got the job.
Is it?
Yeah.
What happened?
I just applied for it over the net and ta-da.
Seek, and you shall find.
Nick, you would have been in this situation so often this year. I mean, how do you adjudicate it? Do you think the umpires know what to look for? I mean, how can you pay a free kick when both players are hanging on like they are here?
Yeah, I think it's just important that the umpires maintain the sort of balance. They don't pay it to the backs, 99% of the time, and then 1% the forwards get it. It's important that they sort of keep the balance. If they see that there is both hanging on, don't worry about it. But if there is a back hanging onto a forward or vice versa, make sure that they pay it sort of 50-50. But it seems to be in favour of the backs a lot of the time.
That spoken like a good forward. That looked play on, both of them, didn't they?
I would have thought so, because it was hard to distinguish who was holding who started it. I've got a feeling, Nick, that through the finals, you're going to have to get it over there with an axe to get a free kick. I reckon that's how tough it'll be. I reckon the umpires, unless they are absolutely certain it's a free kick, they'll just let it go. If they're going to make a mistake, it'll be that they don't make a decision. They'll just call play on.
Yeah, it seems to be the way, especially when the big crowd's involved and they're influencing decisions and things like that, that the umpires are more sort of keen to sort of let the play go, especially if it's going to change a game, if it's a close game.
Do you sometimes feel that David Parkin's coaching you?
No, not at all. No.
Has that the tension between those two men that once came out earlier this year with him and Schwabby ever imploded on the team?
Now, my opinion was that there's storm in a teacup there. There wasn't any tension at all. Schwabby and Parko have been friends for over 20 years. Parko was Schwabby's teacher at school. Now, he's been instrumental in our games against Carlton and sort of helps out and chats to sort of some of the players, but he's definitely not coaching. It's all Schwabby.
Nick, you've won on points, I reckon, over Caro tonight. I reckon you've just beaten her. Not many big men have been able to do that this year. Good luck for the rest of the final series. Catch you, Caro and Woolsey. We're going to leave, as we'd have to leave tonight, with a bloke who gave us so much pleasure over the years, Darren Jarman.
Talking Footy.
This program brought to you by KFC's Chicken Caesar Sandwich. The perfect Caesar sandwich.
Wednesday.
Rock hit the windscreen.
When a child's prank turns to disaster.
Up here, she said.
One of the healers will be left hanging by a thread.
Stay back, or we'll both go through.
All new Blue Healers, Wednesday. With Natalie Barr, this is 7 News.
Good evening. New York is in the grip of a disaster tonight. 2 planes have crashed into the top of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and terrorists are believed to be responsible. One of the planes is believed to have been an American Airlines Boeing 767. It's believed to have been hijacked, and there are also reports of an explosion at the Pentagon. We'll cross live now to NBC.
Earlier this morning for an event on literacy. He was going to a school to talk with kids. David, what can you tell us?
A little bit more about how all of this unfolded and what the president is going to do next. The president declared this an apparent terrorist act. He offered a prayer for the families, promised to hunt down, in his words, the people responsible for this. He will now travel back to Washington, and aides are telling us now that he will immediately convene a national security meeting to see what steps are taken next.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're looking at live pictures of the Pentagon where there is billowing smoke. Jim Miklashevsky just reported that he heard an explosion, and right now we're looking at an aerial view of the Pentagon. Mick, can you talk to us?
Officially, nobody knows exactly what happened. I think the picture is pretty clear. According to one U.S. Army officer who went running past me at a full trot, he said that it appears that a bomb was detonated at the heliport. The heliport is a helicopter landing area right next to the Pentagon, just adjacent to the E-ring. The offices nearest the heliport area are U.S. Army, Reserve officers, and the Army Reserve our offices are located there. But as you can see, it appears to be a pretty significant blast. To give you some perspective, we are almost on the opposite side of the building, the world's largest office building. And as I reported to you, we could feel the building shake and the windows rattle. And as I was in the hallway just a few moments ago, I could smell an acrid kind of smoke, the kind of almost what you'd smell when a fluorescent light goes bad, that kind of ballast smell. And authorities are clearing the building. I don't know if you can hear the sirens outside right now, but it appears that in what I think people here in the building are already describing as a highly sophisticated, coordinated attack, not only against the World Trade Center, but against the Pentagon and U.S. military right here in Washington.
Tell me again, I worked at the Pentagon as well, and it is a huge building. I mean, it's miles and miles of offices. At what location did this seem to have detonated?
It's at the heliport. The heliport, which is as you sit in the Pentagon, you have the Potomac River and Washington, D.C. on one side, and the heliport is located almost exactly on the opposite side of the building, along one of the highways. Easily accessible, even though that they've increased security here significantly at the Pentagon within the past couple of years. That area...
I want to mention to you, Mick, that we are hearing, again, unconfirmed reports that this was the result of a plane crashing in the area as well.
I have no idea, Katie. All I know is that people who were in the building who came running from that part of the building thought it was a bomb of some kind. According to Chris Brown, my colleague who just came in, it appears that whatever it was, and perhaps it was a plane, Katie, if those are the initial reports, crashed into, or the damage is on the roof of the building at the heliport side of the Pentagon, which is just opposite of the Potomac River, as I just said.
We're looking at the White House, Mick, because we are learning that there have been some evacuations from the White House. I'm assuming that everyone is being evacuated from the Pentagon?
Well, nobody's given us the official word yet, but I think that's probably a safe bet. Thank goodness that was a helicopter that just flew by. I'm just a little nervous right now when you hear aircraft go past. But they have, in fact, evacuated that portion of the building. Usually they have sirens that go off in the building alerting you to the fact that it's time to get out. I haven't heard those yet, but just judging by the pictures, it's clear that that part of the building that is not damaged, at least, has been evacuated. Like I said, in the hallway, it was pandemonium. People were rushing from their offices, rushing outside.
And you're in your office at the Pentagon right now, Mick, reporting to us?
I am in the office, but I'm at the opposite side of where this crash occurred.
All right, why don't you see if you can gather some more information. Please, again, be careful, Mick, and we're going to go to Matt, who's going to be talking with Jamie Gangel.
All right, yeah, Katie, thank you very much. I'm joined by Tom Brokaw, and we'll try and recap what's been going on all morning here on the East Coast and in Washington, D.C. in just a few moments. But we do want to go right now to NBC's or today's national correspondent, Jamie Gangel, with some more information. Jamie?
Just repeating, a number of large planes have crashed into the side of the World Trade Center in what looks like a serious terrorism attack. And we're also hearing there has been a blast at the Pentagon, and the White House is being evacuated right now. Joining us now from New York is Ch7 reporter Mike Amor. Mike, what can you see from where you are in New York?
Natalie, I can see the World Trade Center now, and it's well and truly on fire. Smoke is billowing from both buildings. It's a clear sky here, and basically smoke is filling the sky over Manhattan. They've closed the island. We were actually way to the airport when the two planes crashed into the top of the World Trade Center. The feeling we've got emergency vehicles passing us. Our taxi every minute. It seems people here are just stunned. A taxi driver was in fact moved to tears by what had happened. I think this is just an amazing situation.
Now, we can still see the smoke obviously billowing out of there. There are reports it's about 80 floors up of on the 110 floor towers. One plane was smashed into the northern tower, I believe, and the next plane came about 18 minutes after that. There are reports that both planes actually slowed down and lined up. There we can see one of them, that was, I believe, the second plane crashing through, that they actually lined up and aimed straight for the buildings.
It's just, it's hard to understand how that can happen, isn't it? We've had reports just listening to the radio on the taxi on the way in that an American Airlines passenger jet, a 767 from Boston, was hijacked and its pilot forced to fly directly into one of the towers. Not sure whether that was the second or the first plane. It's just staggering that this has happened. Our taxi driver is saying this is another Pearl Harbor.
Now, Mike, we are now getting reports there has been a large explosion at the Pentagon, and that could possibly have been caused by a third plane.
We have to say this is a deliberate attack by somebody, and this has been orchestrated. This is no accident. We've heard President Bush on the radio already saying this is a terrorist attack. We're going to put all our energy into finding who's done this, and we're going to punish them and punish them heavily. So there can be no doubt that this is a terrorist attack. This can't be an accident.
OK, thank you very much, Mike Amor in New York. We'll now cross live back to NBC.
By the way, the U.S. Capitol has been evacuated. There have been evacuations taking place at the White House. Needless to say, many people in the Pentagon have left that building as well.
And here, by the way, in this building in Midtown New York, they have asked a lot of people at 30 Rockefeller Plaza to leave. It's another high-rise Capitol building, which is... in New York, I came down the length of Manhattan, and a lot of people were simply unaware of what had happened. As you tuned in the radio, and then they began to get it. It's election day here in New York.
Primary day.
And what we have is something that most Americans thought could never occur.
As Larry Johnson, a terrorist expert, I just...